Welcome to the O-House Incubating Rocking Waving Shaker Repair Training. I'm Nathaniel Pfeifert. I am a product design engineer. The purpose of this training is to familiarize you with the assembly, the repair, the disassembly of the O-House Incubating Rocking and Waving Shaker product line. Today we'll be dealing specifically with an incubating waver, as that is the most complicated of the product line. The waver has two motors and the rocker has one motor. So everything that's in the waver, you'll be able to take, if you have a rocker, you'll be able to take the information from the waver and use it on the rocker. The purpose of this, again, is to be used to help you understand the system. It's to be used in conjunction with the service manual. This presentation is not meant to be used alone, but you should refer to the service manual for specific step-by-step instructions. This training is being recorded and you will have access to it online. And the goal, hopefully this will help you comfortably work on this unit. The format is going to be about a 45 minute training, and you can reach out to us at any time with questions on this training, both in this broadcast and afterwards. You can reach out through Mary, our customer service representative. Now, for some safety precautions, we did say refer to the service manual. A comprehensive list of safety precautions is available in that manual. For this repair, mainly what we're going to be focusing on is only connect to a proper electrical source via a properly rated grounded electrical outlet using the unit's specified cord. It's important that obviously you don't plug a 120 volt unit into a 230 volt source. And it's also important that that is a grounded outlet. Repair only in a safe, clean, dry indoor environment where the humidity is not too high on a suitable work surface. You'll see that the table that we have set up here is fairly stable. Now, this unit is a rocking unit. It is one of our shaking units. It's not quite as violent as some of our other units, but it does move, and it is important that it is repaired and specifically tested on a stable table. Always use USB protection. Today, I am using a wrist strap. Out in our production facility, in our assembly, we do use these wrist straps. We also use foot straps, and we have properly conductive floors and mats in the cell. The big deal about electrostatic discharge is that it can be very difficult to test for. So our end tests, they won't necessarily catch a damaged board due to electrostatic discharge. So it is extremely important that we use these anytime we have the unit open, so that we're protected and we never expose the board to that. Moving on, we're going to look at some tools and equipment. So I'll move out of the way here and show you what we will be working with. So I have a drill set up with a Phillips head bit. This one is a number 2 Phillips head bit. You could also set this up with a number 1. I made sure that it has a new battery. We will be using safety glasses anytime we're working on this unit. I have a couple little pairs of pliers. You don't need anything large for this particular unit, but this is helpful particularly when you're dealing with the springs in the unit. I have a few different types of screwdrivers. So I have a very small flathead screwdriver. This will be important in a couple of applications. I have a number 1 Phillips head and a number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. I also have a 5/16 nut driver. That will be important when we're taking off the ground lug. And I have a pair of ring pliers that are important when we're working with the springs, or can be important for working with the springs. So this is the unit. The first thing we're going to look at is when you go into your service manual, you're going to have a problem solver guide. The very first thing on that problem solver guide is going to be how to change a fuse. And that's the first thing you're going to look at when you see the unit. So we're going to go over that, and it'll show how to use the problem solver guide. We're not going to go through everything in the problem solver guide, but it'll show how to use it. So the symptom on this is that the unit will not run. A possible cause, the first possible cause, is a blown fuse. And then you have the remedy of add or replace the fuse as necessary. To replace the fuse, we're going to take the unit. We are going to unplug it, make sure it does not have power. Flip it around back. Here is the power entry module. We're going to take our small flathead screwdriver, pop it under the fuse drawer, pop out the fuse drawer. The fuse drawer here has a fuse clipped into it. We can take that out and look at the fuse, see if it's blown. Yeah, so that one's good. But assuming it wasn't good, the first thing we're going to do is we'll take the old blown fuse, we'll pop it into the back of the fuse drawer here and push the spare fuse out. And we can take that fuse and put it into the main receptacle there. Now, when we do that, then we have an empty spare fuse drawer. So we're always going to make sure that we have, when the unit leaves the repair facility, we always have 2 good fuses in it. So we're going to put a new fuse into that drawer. This one wasn't bad, so I'm just popping the fuse that I took out back into that spare fuse drawer. And we push it back into the unit, and we've changed the fuse. Now we're going to go through a little bit of unit familiarization. So I'll flip this back around to the front. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to move this camera a little closer. So that we're looking down at the unit. There we go. I'll plug the unit in. And as soon as the unit gets plugged in, it goes on, it gives you a revision level. This is the standby button. When you push the standby button, the unit is going to self-level. The unit has independent temperature, speed, and tilt, and time functions. So you can set the temperature under the lid here. It has its own on-off button. So you can put the set point up and down. You can turn the temperature on or off. For this, we're going to leave the temperature off. You also have speed. When the speed LED is lit, you can set your speed anywhere from 30 RPMs down to 0. By pressing function, you can go to the tilt. This can tilt at 10 degrees to, or sorry, 1 degree to 20 degrees. And we'll turn that on. And as I said, you can set any one of these independently of the others. So you can have the speed on, tilt on, without the temperature on or the time on. If you do start the time, the unit will count down, beep when it gets to 0, and then it will stop the unit. If you want it to run continuously, you just don't turn the time on. So that's a basic unit familiarization. All right, now we're going to get into disassembly and repair of the unit. I'll move you a little closer here. We will flip this over. So before we get into repairing this unit, we are going to have safety glasses on. We are going to have our ESD wrist strap on. I'm going to make sure that the metal part of that ESD wrist strap that's grounded is against my skin. I don't want that up and over clothing, so that will hinder it. We're going to make sure that the unit is unplugged. Then we're going to first open the lid and pop off the mat here. Put that over to the side. It's not a huge deal if that's not done, but if you move it off to the side and you don't have it in there, when you flip the unit over, it's not falling off and getting places in the lid it's not in the way. All right, now I'm going to flip the unit over. And this is just to show you. So I wouldn't normally take these out with it flipped up like that. But I have 11 screw locations here. And I'm going to take them out. 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. And 11. So we'll tip this back up to get these screws out. Hopefully they don't roll away. Okay. One more under here. Go. And there are your 11 Phillips head SEM screws. There we go. We'll put them off to the side. flip it back over. And you can take the base plate off. Now, the only thing connecting the bottom housing to the top housing is this ground lug here. So we're going to take our nut driver and just undo that ground lug. Once we get it loose, take that off. Now, when I was going over the tools, I didn't discuss this, but you will want torque drivers. The service manual will give you proper torque and Loctite specifications. It's important that those are followed. I am not going through each of those in this video, but it is extremely important that when it says to use a specific torque or Loctite, that is used on the unit. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is taking off the circuit board. So to replace the circuit board, you're going to take off this membrane switch connector. Easily work that off. The DC power connector, the RTD connector here, the heater connector here. These can be rather difficult to get off, these fast-ons. There and there. The motor connectors, this is the fan motor connection here. And these I was having trouble with earlier, so I'm just going to push on them a little bit from the bottom as I'm working that up and off. There and there. Now, I want to note that as I'm pushing on these fast-ons from the bottom, I am not pushing down against the circuit board. We don't want to torque or bend that circuit board at all. Now, if it's a bad circuit board that you're removing, that's one thing, but we want to be very careful with the PCB. We have this AC power, and then for the waver, we have two motors. We have a rocker motor here and a rocker motor here. This second front to back is one thing that makes this a waver. So in the rocker, you would not have this back rocking motor or stepper motor. So you would not have these two connections. You do in the waver, you would not in the rocker. So those two connections come off. The other two connections come off. Now, here you have these two connections are for the motor, but also for the sensor. You have one motor connection, one sensor connection. Once you have all those connections off, then you can take the circuit board off. And the circuit board is just put in with 4 Phillips head screws. I'll show you those in a second. So those 4 Phillips head screws, replacement screws, should come with your new circuit board. There's the circuit board. If you take this out, it's important to have it in an electrostatic discharge protection. To put it back in, you're just going to line up the three LED windows, LEDs here, LED displays here with the LED windows. Align the screw holes. And I do not use power to put this back on. I would use a proper torque driver. Today I'm just using a screwdriver, but if I was repairing a customer's unit, I would be using the proper torque driver. It is important to just lightly put each screw in. Make sure you have all 4 screws in before going back and torquing it down. This protects the board from being bent at all by improper or uneven tightening of the screws, and it protects the components. This is a fairly large board, and it has 4 mounting points, 1 in each corner. So there is a risk of bending that board. Once you have all 4 screws in, you're just going to come back with your torque driver and tighten them down. Then you would put each of the connections back on. 1, 2 for the one waver motor. 1, 2 for the second stepper motor. I'm going to put the AC power back on, DC power back on, RTD back on. I'm going to go back and put the motor connections on. This is the fan motor as opposed to the stepper motors. Heater connections on. Make sure everything is pushed down well. And before I go back and show you how to put back on the membrane switch, I'm going to show you how to replace the membrane switch. So we're going to flip this over now. Tilt you down a little bit. All right, so this whole panel, slightly different color, is the membrane switch. To take it off, we're going to find the portion of it that has the largest gap. It's fairly tight fitting to the housing, but there's going to be one place where it has a larger gap than any other place. So you just want to find that and get a small flathead screwdriver under it. Now, once you remove the front panel, it is no longer good. So even if that wasn't the issue, you're not going to be putting this back on. You don't have to worry about keeping the membrane switch good, but if you don't want to damage the housing. So as you do this, it's important, again, that you don't pry against the housing. You're getting something under it and you're pulling up. We'll just get one corner up so that you can grab it and rip the front panel off. It's just adhered to the housing, but it's important that you don't damage the housing in that process. All right, so that's 2 of the 3 things that we have replaced: the front panel and the PCB main board. As we put the membrane switch back on, when we do replace that membrane switch, there'll be a backing on the adhesive. We'll peel that off. We will put the ribbon cable through the housing, and then we'll line it up with the indent in the housing and stick it down. The important thing here is as we're sticking it down, we don't want to bend each of these switches. If they're bent back and bent forward, it can damage the switches. So you want to lay it on flat, keep it flat as you're storing it, and then seal it down just by putting some pressure on it. It has a pressure-sensitive adhesive on the back. And then, as I said, we would get to replacing this cable. I'm going to bring you in a little closer here. So here is the membrane switch header. It is possible to put this connector on the wrong pins. So if it's a pin off or a couple pins off, you can have an issue. So make sure you line that up correctly with the pins. And then the other important thing is you don't just want to push from the back. You want to kind of pinch so you're not putting too much pressure on the header. You also don't want to bend the ribbon cable too much. So that should stay fairly flat and not have a crimp in it. So you push that on. And there we have two of the three things that we need to replace. The third thing that we could possibly replace in this unit are these cables. I'm going to get a little more light in here. Hopefully you'll be able to see this a little better. So you have a cable here running across here. You have a cable running front to back here. That goes over front to back, goes over a pulley here and a pulley here. These we refer to as the idler pulleys. This pulley is going to be referred to as the drive pulley. I'll get a little bit closer in for you there. Side to side, you have a pulley here and a pulley here. Now, while this looks like a cable, one cable that goes straight across, it's actually two cables on each pulley, a short cable and a long cable. What we're going to do to get to them is turn the pulley so that those screws are facing up. And we are going to we'll do the front to back first. Note the front to back goes under the side to side pulley, under the side to side wire. So we're going to get a small number 1 Phillips head screwdriver. Take out this screw here and that screw there holding the wire. So we'll do this one first, this front one first. Hopefully that is visible. Okay, I'm going to just turn this a little bit, hopefully get in a little closer. And that screw can come all the way out. Get my needle nose pliers in there, pull that screw out. There we go. There we go. So there's a screw and the wire off. Now we can roll this around to loosen that second wire. Come over here and undo that screw. Okay. Bring this up. That's the screw through the end of the wire there. Okay. At this point, I can flip the unit over and undo these two wires. Now, I'm going to get some light down there. I'm going to lower you a bit. Bear with me here as I get this camera set up correctly. There we go. I don't know whether this is too visible, but here you have a spring and the wire coming off of it. To get the wire off, you can use your ring pliers. Just open the end of the spring a bit and the wire comes off. And then you flip it around and do the same thing in the back. Get your ring pliers in. Open up the end of that spring a bit, and the wire pops off. Now, for each pair of wires, front to back and side to side, you will have one long wire and one short wire, and two mounting screws. Again, those are your mounting screws. It matters which side they go onto, and we'll get into that now. So we're going to flip the unit back over. And raise you up just a little bit. Look down at this. There we go. Bring some light over. Okay. And so there's a hole in the housing here and a hole in the housing right back here that the wire goes down through. You want the short one to go through the close hole. I'm missing one of my wires. Evan, can you take a look at that? For that, I move. So you have your short wire. It's going to go down through the housing, over the pulley, and it's going to go close. Hold on one second, and I will find this other wire that I think fell off the back as I was moving the unit. It was right over here. In the way. All right, we're going to put you on hold while we find this other cable. Pause this. Okay, well, welcome back, and I apologize for that brief interlude. We had one of them fall onto the floor and just blend into the carpet. So here are your two cables. You'll find the shorter of the two cables. Take that and put it onto the unit, onto the motor drive pulley at the space where the close hole in the housing is. So there's the hole in the housing. There's the pulley, the motor drive pulley, and the idler pulley. You're going to attach it at the close spot. So we're going to put that screw through the cable. We'll take it over to the spot. So turn that screw hole so that it's directly up. Put the screw in. And hopefully you can see this. I'll take you in nice and close. The crimp end of that pulley, the crimp end of the cable can move side to side a little bit. So as we're tightening this down, I'm just going to put a flathead screwdriver in one side so that can't move all the way over against the wall. It's also important that we use the proper torque on this, which will be in your service manual. There you have it. It'll focus again. Come on. Focus, focus, focus. So there you have it, that the screw is all the way in, and this crimp is right in the center of the drive pulley. Take you back up. And now we're going to do the opposite wire. Now we're taking the long wire, and to do this, we're going to drop that down over the pulley, drop the first wire down over the pulley. We're going to take this one full revolution. And then we're going to put the second pulley wire on the same way. So we'll put the screw through the ring. I apologize for my hands being in the way there. Won't be in just a second. So we start that screw. There we go. Start to tighten it down. Then before we fully tighten it, we're just going to drop that flathead screwdriver behind it so that it can't push all the way over against that wall and stays in the center. And then torque it down to the proper setting. Now this one is going to go over the pulley up here and down through the housing. As long as you drop it straight down through, you won't have an issue, but we'll see from the top there is a shroud around the heating element. So you want to make sure that that wire doesn't kink and go straight down through the housing into the incubation chamber. All right. I'll take you in and give you a close-up of how this pulley system looks. There we go. So you have one wrapped fully around the drive pulley, and then it goes down over the idler pulley, and then up front, this one is going over the idler pulley and down into the system. All right. So now we're going to open the unit. I'm going to keep tension on each of those pulleys. I'm going to make sure that I do the back one first, because that one is going to be the hardest one to get. I'll open it up. And that one didn't go down all the way through the housing, so I'm just going to reposition it here. Make sure that that is pushed all the way through into the incubating spot, into the incubating housing, and open this up. Kind of curved down, so I just have to fish it through the correct way. So we're looking right down here, and you'll see that come through. I'll pull that up. And then just going to lower you. You can see under this. Okay. So now we have that spring here. We want to open it up. And put the wire into it. Light down, move you a little closer so you can see that. So there we have it. Okay. Back off a little bit. I apologize if I'm moving this around a lot, but I do really want you to be able to see how this goes. Okay, next we're going to come around here, tighten this, make sure that it comes right around that pulley. Pulley is right down here. It's a brown pulley right down here. And Going to make sure that that is fished. Again, fished correctly through the housing. All the way through into the incubating chamber, keeping tension on it. We're going to put it over the pulley there. And it didn't go all the way through, so open it up, pull it back. And it got hooked into the heater. We're just gonna come in here, pull it out away from that heater. There we go. And I'm going to get a straight on look at this so you can see how this is going. Straight through into the housing. There we go. Feed it straight through, keep pressure on it, and bring it over the pulley. Now we can flip it down. And we can hook it to the pulley. Instead of the ring pliers here, a standard set of pliers, because you're pulling down on that, can work to hook that over. And there we have the front to back pulley. Now we're going to do the same thing for the side to side pulleys. We're going to close it. The side to side pulley. And one thing I didn't do here, but it's okay because we're going to undo the side to side pulley. This front to back pulley should be going underneath the side to side pulley wire. So if I was only replacing that one, or if I had done that last, I would have to do that. I'd have to take that off. But since we're now replacing the side to side motion, I can just take off this wire and that'll go back over top when we come back to it. So there's one wire. Roll that pulley. Take the other wire out. Okay. Take the screw out. Flip the unit back over. Open it up with your ring pliers. Right there. Try to get you a little closer in on that. Hopefully that's fairly visible. And you're just going to slide the wire off the spring there. So that's one wire. I'm going to go with the other side to side wire. The this around. Here. And that actually, this spring is a little bit stretched out at that point. So it came straight off. But normally you would have to use your ring pliers to open that up a bit. So there are your two wires, one shorter than the other one. As you're putting them back on, same way as you did front to back, these are just going over top of the other wire. So you take your short wire, put a screw into it, there. Take it over here to the pulley, the drive pulley. I'm going to go with the one that's lined up with the idler pulley here. Okay, put that in. Proper torque. When you get it close, you can put your spacer screwdriver in, tighten it down all the way. Hopefully that'll focus, please focus. All right. But you get the point as to where that is right there. Okay. So now we're going to put the other one on the same way. The screw through. There we go. I'm going to roll the pulley, roll the drive pulley once around. Put the other wire on. Put your spacer in. Tighten that up to the proper torque. You really can't push down too hard on this, otherwise the pulley moves, and it's important to kind of keep that straight. It's just that last little bit that you need the spacer in there for. So make sure that the side-to-side one is over top. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now we're going to turn the close one back. Make sure that stays on. Put it down straight through the housing. And it wants to follow it around, so you just put it straight down through over the pulley. Open it up. Open up that space. There we go. Hook on the wire. Tighten it up using the other wire. You can see that. Turn it straight down through the unit, same as we did out front. Over the pulley. Raise it up. Okay. Now we're going to take the pliers. This last one, again, I like the regular pliers. Hook it on. Flatten it. You want to start with it fairly flat. Flip it up. Now, when this is flat, you have the motor encoder over here. And that, in both directions, the small opening in that motor encoder, right over here, should be towards the sensor. So there we go. That's one. Back here, that's two right there. That should be towards the sensor when the unit is flat. So that's fairly good. All right, I'm going to move you back a little bit. Now we're going to talk about putting this back together. These two should not be in tight contact, so the two cables should not be in tight contact with one another. You don't want too much rubbing between the two. Okay. Now we're going to take the base plate. We have a nut here, just a SEM nut. So we can focus. Come on, focus. Good enough. All right. We'll put the ground wire over the ground lug. Tighten that down. And tighten it first. I'm moving the ground wire around this way as far as possible because when I tighten it with the nut driver, and by the way, you do want a proper torque on this. When I tighten it with the nut driver, it's going to want to move around. Now, the back of the housing, if you can see, both the top housing and the bottom housing has a groove for this sheet metal piece. It goes in place in, I'll say, the top housing first. All right. Now, before you put this together, the most important thing is having all the wires towards the inside of all these mounting points. You don't want that to get pinched in between the top housing and the bottom housing. It's fairly easy for that to happen if you don't pay attention to it at this point. So all these wires, see if you can see, come over the top. All these wires should run around, so it should be inside of that boss, inside of that boss, inside of that boss. That's pretty much the 3 pinch points that can happen here. You can see this wants to get up onto here. That could be a problem. So we push that down inside. Make sure it stays there as we close the unit up. So again, as we close the unit up, in back, we slide it down over the sheet metal. Back you up a little bit. And then we put back in those 11 screws. Consult your manual for proper torque specifications on this. 1, 2. And as you're putting these screws in, you want to be looking down into these holes. And again, up front here, you're worried about the wires coming up and being pinched. If you look down into those holes, you should not see a wire underneath of them, anywhere near them. 3, 4, 5. Again, tip it back up like I had it to take them off. This gives you a better view of it. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Flip it right side up. Open the lid. Put the black mat on. Close it up. Plug it in. And when you do this, make sure that the tray is fairly flat to start with. Hit the standby and it should self-level itself. There we go. And you have a working unit. Now, just a word of caution, if you do get an E4 there, if this is originally started off to the side, when it does its self-leveling, it could think that there is an issue. There we go. It could give you an error code. Okay, so it didn't this time, but it can give you an error code. Sometimes it's fooled into thinking there's an obstruction on it. If that's the case, you just re-level the tray, get it back to center, then close it and do your standby and turn it back on again. Okay. Take it back up here. All right. Well, thank you for coming to the repair training for the O-House rockers and wavers. Now you would do your final testing and packing that you can find in the service repair manual. We are here to help. As I said at the beginning, we want to answer your questions. If you do have any questions at all, you can contact Mary Earhart. She is our customer happiness representative here. And if she doesn't, she's very competent and she might be able to point you right to the answer to the question. If she can't point you to that answer right away to the question, she will point you to one of the engineering team, one of us, maybe me, and we will help you out with repairing this unit and understanding the inside of this unit. Again, thank you for being here, and we appreciate your time helping and learning to repair these units. Thank you.